The late afternoon sun cast long golden shadows across the playground, yet the laughter of children seemed to fade into the distance where Charlotte sat alone. Her wheelchair was parked near the edge of the park, half hidden beneath the tall oak tree. From where she sat, she could see the other kids running freely, their sneakers pounding the mulch as they darted from swings to slides, their voices echoing with unrestrained joy. She watched, her heart aching for the simple things she could not do, things that once felt ordinary but now seemed like distant dreams. Ever since the accident that had left her paralyzed, Charlotte had grown used to the silence. People often looked at her with pity, others avoided her altogether, unsure of what to say. Loneliness had become her most constant companion, wrapping around her more tightly than any blanket. Today felt no different, until a voice, warm and unfamiliar, broke through her isolation. "Excuse me," the stranger said softly, standing a respectful distance away. It was a man in his mid-30s, carrying a backpack slung over one shoulder and holding the hand of a little girl with bright, curious eyes. Charlotte blinked, caught off guard, her heart racing at the simple recognition. The man gave her a gentle smile, one that wasn't heavy with pity but light with sincerity. "My daughter has been asking if she could come play near you. Would that be okay?" His words were simple, almost ordinary, but to Charlotte, they were extraordinary. She had been invisible for so long, yet in that moment, someone had seen her, not as the girl in the wheelchair, but as someone worthy of company. Charlotte's lips parted, but for a moment, no sound came out. She had forgotten what it felt like to be asked permission for something so small yet so meaningful. Finally, she nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, of course." The little girl let go of her father's hand and walked closer, her ponytail swaying with each step. "Hi. I'm Lily," she chirped, her tone filled with the innocence and honesty only a child could carry. Without hesitation, she sat cross-legged on the ground right beside Charlotte's wheelchair, as if there were no differences between them, no barriers to overcome. For the first time in months, Charlotte felt a smile tug at her lips, an unpracticed, shaky smile, but real nonetheless. Her father introduced himself as Daniel, a single dad who had recently moved into the neighborhood. He didn't hover, didn't pressure, simply sat on a nearby bench, keeping a watchful eye while giving the girls space to talk. Lily began to chatter about her favorite games, her new school, and even offered Charlotte one of the colorful bracelets she had made from beads. "You can wear it when you feel lonely," Lily said with complete sincerity. The gesture hit Charlotte like a wave, not because it was extravagant, but because it was genuine. For so long, adults had spoken to her in hushed tones, cautious and careful, but here was a child who treated her as nothing more, or less, than a friend. For the first time since the accident, Charlotte didn't feel broken. She felt included. And sitting under that oak tree, with laughter starting to bubble between them, the silence she once carried began to crack open, letting in a little light. As the afternoon stretched on, Charlotte found herself lost in Lily's world of stories and imagination. They pretended the oak tree above them was a castle tower, its branches protecting them from dragons that lurked in the shadows. Lily asked Charlotte to be the princess, and though Charlotte hesitated at first, she slowly allowed herself to play along. Her laughter, rusty but genuine, escaped into the air, surprising even her own ears. Daniel glanced over from the bench, his eyes softening at the sight. He had seen the way Charlotte sat alone when they arrived, her gaze heavy with longing, and now he saw the spark of joy flickering back to life. Still, he stayed quiet, giving the girls space to nurture a connection that was blossoming naturally, without adult interference. Then, unexpectedly, Lily stood up and said, "Do you want to race me to the swings?" For a split second, Charlotte's smile faltered. The reminder of her chair, her limitations, came rushing back like a cold tide. Her hands tightened on the wheels, the old ache of being different threatening to return. But before the silence could grow heavy, Daniel stepped in, not with pity, but with creativity. "How about this?" he suggested warmly, kneeling beside them. "Lily can push you, and together, you'll both race me. That way, you'll have double the power." Lily's face lit up, and she clapped her hands in delight. Charlotte blinked, caught between disbelief and hope. Nobody had ever adapted the rules for her before. Usually, she was excused from the game altogether. Slowly, her heart swelled with a fragile kind of courage. "All right," she said, her voice trembling with something new, possibility. For the first time, the race wasn't about what she couldn't do. It was about what they could do together. The race began with Lily gripping the handles of Charlotte's wheelchair, her small arms pumping with determination. Daniel jogged beside them, exaggerating his movements as though he were struggling to keep up. "Oh no, you're too fast for me," he called out with playful drama, sending Lily into a fit of giggles. Charlotte laughed too, the sound bursting free and echoing across the playground like music she hadn't heard in years. For the first time since her accident, she wasn't just watching the fun, she was part of it. Every push forward, every bump along the mulch path, felt like a victory. Children nearby began to notice, and instead of staring in quiet curiosity, some cheered them on, their voices rising like a chorus of encouragement. Charlotte's cheeks flushed, not with embarrassment but with exhilaration. The finish line was the row of swings, and as they reached it, Lily declared triumphantly, "We won. We beat Daddy." Daniel clutched his chest, pretending to collapse. "Defeated by the champions of the playground," he groaned, falling onto the grass. Charlotte's laughter came again, stronger this time, and her eyes sparkled with something she thought she'd lost forever, confidence. For years, her wheelchair had felt like a cage, but in this moment, it felt like a chariot, carrying her into belonging. She looked at Lily, then at Daniel, and felt something deep stir inside her, gratitude. This wasn't just kindness. This was transformation, an opening of doors she believed were closed forever. And as the breeze rustled the oak leaves above, Charlotte realized her silence had been broken not just by words, but by action, the kind of compassion that lifted her spirit higher than she thought it could ever go. As the evening light began to soften, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Charlotte felt a warmth inside her that had nothing to do with the sunset. For so long, she had braced herself against pity, shrinking away from conversations that reminded her of what she had lost. Yet Daniel and Lily had given her something different, something she hadn't dared to hope for. They hadn't treated her as fragile glass to tiptoe around, but as a person still capable of laughter, play, and friendship. Sitting by the swings, Charlotte's voice came more easily now. She told Lily about the books she loved to read, how she used to ride her bike through the park before the accident, and how sometimes she still dreamed of flying. Lily listened with wide-eyed wonder, as if every word was a treasure. Daniel, too, leaned in with quiet respect, not rushing her, not changing the subject, just listening. Then, almost without realizing it, Charlotte shared something she had never spoken aloud. "Sometimes I feel invisible," she admitted softly, her eyes fixed on the horizon. "Like the world just keeps moving, and I'm left behind." The air grew still, and for a heartbeat, she wished she hadn't spoken. But Daniel's reply was steady, filled with sincerity. "You're not invisible, Charlotte. You've just been waiting for the right people to really see you." His words struck her deeply, pulling at the walls she had built around her heart. In that simple truth, something shifted, an ache began to loosen, replaced with a fragile but undeniable hope. By the time the first stars pricked through the fading twilight, Charlotte's world felt transformed. What had started as another lonely day ended with the discovery that kindness, when offered sincerely, could change everything. Lily tugged gently at her hand before they left, slipping the second bracelet from her wrist and fastening it around Charlotte's. "Now we match," she said proudly, her smile wide and unshakable. Charlotte's eyes brimmed with tears, but for once, they weren't born of sadness, they were tears of gratitude, of being seen and cherished. Daniel stood nearby, watching the moment with a quiet smile, then promised, "We'll be back tomorrow. Friends don't leave friends sitting alone." Those words wrapped around Charlotte's heart like a promise she never knew she needed. As she wheeled herself home that night, the bracelet catching glimmers of starlight, Charlotte realized the silence that had haunted her for so long had finally been broken. Not by grand gestures or empty sympathy, but by small acts of compassion. A child's laughter, a father's respect, a shared game of make-believe. She felt stronger, lighter, as though the weight she had carried alone had been lifted, piece, by hands willing to help hold it. In that simple kindness, Charlotte discovered something she thought was lost forever, the possibility of joy, of connection, of belonging. And as the cool night air kissed her cheeks, she whispered a vow to herself: never again would she believe she was invisible. Because even the smallest words, spoken with love,